joined by Lorna MacGregor, CEO of Lifeline WA. Lorna, thanks for your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
For those who don't know Lifeline, can you please give us a quick overview of this important organisation?
So Lifeline WA has been in existence for over 30 years. We provide a range of services designed and focused on reducing emotional and mental health crisis, intervening in suicide, and generally improving emotional well-being. Our flagship service is 13 11 14. It's the crisis intervention line, which provides a 24/7, 365-day-a-year service where anyone can call if they're in crisis or require support through a suicide ideation moment.
We're here at the RIU Explorers Conference in Fremantle, which is one of the biggest resources conferences in Australia. You've been welcomed in and invited to the conference as a very active participant. Is the resources sector starting to now embrace Lifeline and some of the ethos of the organisation?
We're really honoured to be invited. Lifeline WA has been working with the resources sector for a couple of years now. We have a very strong relationship with the Chamber of Minerals and Energy. Our interest in the resources sector is partly about our interest in men. Men are a bit of an enigma for Lifeline WA. 3/4 of suicides are by men. Unfortunately, men are much less likely to reach out for help. Generally, across Australia, 36% of our callers are men. In WA, it's only 27% of men that reach out for help. The mining sector, the resource sector, employs predominantly men, and so we're really interested in working with their employers so that we can reach a high-risk group. Our second interest in the resources sector is as a result of research that was conducted by the Mental Health Commission 2 years ago, which found specifically with fly-in, fly-out workers, they suffered levels of mental distress at double the rates of the average population. So that explains why Lifeline WA is so interested in working with the sector so that we can reach this high-risk group. The resources sector has been really welcoming of Lifeline WA and has worked really actively with us, and we have received a lot of support.
From an industry body and an employer perspective, how receptive has the resources industry been to Lifeline and its messaging?
We have been surprised and delighted with the level of interest and partnership. Working with the Chamber of Minerals and Energy, we have a very collaborative relationship around looking at ways that we can better reach the mining sector and employees in the mining sector. Their members and others in the sector have really engaged actively. They've been both supported us through donations and funding various initiatives, but they've also provided us with feedback, attended workshops, given us access to their employees on mine sites. The level of support that we've had actually has been overwhelming, and we are so delighted. And consequently, the results, what we end up being able to deliver back into the sector, will reflect the quality of that collaboration.
And what about at the employee level, the sort of hard nuts to crack? How have you found that level of engagement?
First, I'm going to confess that I had an assumption around men who worked in the mining sector, because predominantly when I've been on site, I've been talking to men. I have been really surprised at how open the guys on the site have been to engaging with Lifeline and sharing their stories and giving feedback about how they want to be engaged, how they want to receive information. They've been remarkably open, so it's really heartening to see on the ground how much the stigma around talking about mental health, talking about emotional crisis and talking about suicide is actually breaking down, and I have seen that in all my dealings with the sector over the last 2 years.
Partly is that a cultural shift generally, that people are more open to having this wider conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there has been a lot of work done over lots of years by organisations like ours to really challenge the stigma, and there is a lot of stigma. There is a lot of shame still associated with dealing with mental health issues, but also dealing with complex personal issues. There is still a lot of stigma around that, and there remains a lot of stigma around reaching out for help and needing help. However, I am seeing really good signs of change on the really down in the grassroots.
So, looking forward, in a perfect world, if we were sitting 2 years from now, what would Lifeline's engagement with the resources sector look like?
Our engagement with the resources sector would be that Lifeline WA is providing interventions, training products, supports that are absolutely built around the needs of the sector and the employees in the sector. And the sector is funding Lifeline to provide those supports, so that every single person, and perhaps this is a pipe dream, but every single person who works in the resources sector is aware of the supports that are out there, have good practices around their mental health because they've received good training, are aware of their options for reaching out for help, that within their local communities, whatever that community is, they're getting strong supports from their employer, but also their mates, their friends, their family. That's my dream.
How do we get there?
Well, how do we get there? Unfortunately, things often come down to funding. So Lifeline WA is really committed to working with the sector and for the sector to get that outcome, to reach that pipe dream. Along the way, we do need funding. 13, 11, 14 is there for every Western Australian, and it's there for every single person in the sector. And given where some of the employees in your sector, in the resources sector work, they're a long way from GPs, they're a long way from families, they're a long way from friends, but they're only ever a phone call away from 13, 11, 14. Unfortunately, research has also shown that only 28% of fly-in, fly-out workers are aware of any helpline, let alone 13, 11, 14. Now that's probably a criticism of Lifeline WA, but we can only do as much as we can do in terms of even awareness raising based on how much funding we have. There is also the really uncomfortable truth that we're not answering every call, and we're not answering every call because the need is growing faster than we can resource the training and deployment of volunteers. So I would really, I know that sounds like a very simple answer, but it is a very truthful answer. We do need funding. But the other thing we really need is for the resources sector to continue to engage positively with us as we start working through how to best provide supports for your sector and for your employees.
Lifeline WA, an important organisation helping an important sector of Western Australia. Lorna, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.